I grew up in Minnesota. They called me Nature Boy as a kid because I've always loved nature. And I was a wrestler. I wrote my goals at 19. Our college wrestling coach said everybody has to write their goals. I wrote that I wanted to be a 3-time All-American and national champion. And when the coach saw my goals, he smirked and he said, "These goals are kind of lofty, don't you think?" Well, the act of writing the goals and visualizing helped me become a 4-time All-American and national champion. I then moved to Hawaii and bartended for a few years. And then I traveled to Africa and Asia and all over the world. I met a lot of awesome people. And then I wrote my goals for the second time. I was 29, and I wrote that I wanted to be retired in 3 years. And I got back to Minnesota broke. And a guy at the bar said, "Hey, Jim, you should come work for my mortgage company," which I did. And about 3.5 years later, did $1.3 billion in gross revenue and bought a boat and went to live on the ocean to develop the Wisdom Foundation, which is about getting good stuff taught in schools. And I went up against the Board of Education and a bunch of teachers who were upset with me for criticizing them. And I wasn't even criticizing them. I was simply offering something to them that had changed my life. And then fast forward, I moved to Costa Rica. And that was when I learned that the world is controlled by crazy people. And that's when I went into scarcity. And so that led me to here, right? People say, "What got you here?" Well, quite frankly, what got me here is pain and suffering and failure and desperation.
What do you mean, though, by fear and suffering and desperation and getting you here? Like, what was that about?
I learned in 2007 that the way we are using our resources is unsustainable, and all unsustainable systems fail. And I have 4 daughters. And then I learned that it's not because people are bad by our very nature. It's because we are being led to the destruction of our natural world by what I call evil. Right? For lack of a better term, everybody knows what evil means. There's a lot of different perspectives on evil. I just call it evil. And I went into a scarcity frame of mind because I was worried about the future for my kids and my future grandkids. And then I started investing everything I owned, my energy, my time, my money, into studying the problem. And I studied the problem all day, every day, 12 hours a day for at least 2 years. And that's when I read Bill Mollison's quote. Bill Mollison was the founder of permaculture, which is all around me. It's nature. It's modeling after what works and designing our land to be productive and then to become the stewards of our land. So I read his quote. His quote was, "Though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple." And I started to sob.
Okay. And you are now involved with permaculture. What is that?
Permaculture is a strategy to solve all of the world's biggest problems. It is based on the ethics of people care, earth care, and reinvesting our surplus to people care and earth care. And it has a set of principles that mimic and model after what works in a natural system. So for instance, I'm sitting here in a 3-year-old food forest. 3 years ago, there was nothing around me but sand. Florida sugar sand, kind of like what you can see on the ground right there. That was everywhere. Now, I'm surrounded by a perennial food forest with over 280 different types of food-producing plants. And I can walk outside right now and I can just anytime I want, I can go grab a meal for my family, and I'm not a farmer, and I never want to be a farmer. I'm just a harvester because we've designed our land effectively and efficiently.
Okay, hold on. So permaculture is a way of integrating everything that you are growing with the environment. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. Nature, God's design, whatever perspective you want to call it, nature does all the work when we design it properly. For instance, the Amazon rainforest was a designed food forest 5,000 years ago.
How does that differ then from any other type of farming?
Well, for one, is we have no poisons in our system, and we have no GMO crops in our system. And that's the biggest thing is we take the poisons out and we use plants that are made for this zone. And we have a wide diversity of plants. So in an area this size, in a normal farm, there would be one crop. And that is not natural. You cannot grow food without poisons when you grow food in an unnatural way, because the locusts will come in, or the mice or the rabbits or whatever pest that you have there. It'll come in and it'll find a feast, and then it'll have millions of babies. And pretty soon you've got a plague of locusts with no food, unless you want to eat locusts, right? This system is built on diversity. So diversity is the foundation of strength of the system. So right around me, we have bananas and chaya and mulberries and lychees and longans and guavas. And I mean, there's just infinite diversity all around me. And bugs, the bug that likes the mulberry doesn't like the guava typically. When you add longevity to the idea of efficiency, it's radically inefficient, right? So what we're doing all around the world is we're mining our soil and we're destroying the microbiome that literally creates the life that we live here on Earth. So when you put these poisons down, you might be serving that one plant for a short term, but the nutrient density of our food has fallen off a cliff because now we're growing it not for nutrient density and not for regeneration. We're growing it simply so it looks good and it can store in transportation to get on the shelf. So a monoculture is something like 100 acres of corn or soy or any of these crops that are, you drive by and it's one monochromatic, one color, one level. What I'm sitting in is a food forest that is infinitely more productive. And we don't have to farm it. Right? So everything that we've been taught in the last several generations by the big ag companies and the big poison producing companies who have the marketing budget to convince us that what they're doing is correct, everything that they're teaching is absolutely opposite of what is functional and what works in a natural system. And I'll go a few levels deeper here. We have about 47 million acres of lawn in the United States alone. If we simply took half of that, let's call it 25 million acres, and we put regenerative permaculture food systems on there, then the 890 million acres of farmland that is mostly poisoned and being destroyed would literally go back to nature because we wouldn't need it.
Yes. But isn't the purpose of monoculture to mass produce?
It is. And it's very effective for a short term. Relative to the history of life on Earth, it's effective for several generations. And then all the land that those crops are on is failing. And it's failing now at a rate that's exponential, right? The crops are failing. The nutrient density is failing. The soil is being killed and mined, which is creating dust bowls again now, right? So the act of centralizing. In fact, you can look this up. I believe it is the company BlackRock, which is not only the name, it's the intention, is now in control through its investment strategy of over 90% of our food supply. What we need to do again, and it's joyful and beneficial on every conceivable level, is we need to become the stewards of our land again. And doing so is not work, it's the ultimate play. It is so joyful. This system with the birds and the butterflies and all the life, this system calls to me. I wake up in the morning, I have a coffee, and I cannot wait to walk outside and see what kind of treasures nature is giving me.
I've got a friend who is a farmer. He doesn't farm monoculture and he doesn't farm permaculture. I suppose you could say he's somewhere in between. He does a type of regenerative farming, but he makes the same point as you. He says that the foundation of farming is the soil, and what we see around us in sort of big agriculture is the destruction of the soil. It doesn't last that long. And then what? What do you do later?
You starve. Mass destruction of our soil, which is happening globally, is the biggest problem. That's the result of the biggest problem, which is spraying the poisons. Poisons are the biggest problem, and the insane use of our resources, which is, that's it. So at the end of the day, we are going to experience one of two things, and it's happening already very fast. We are either going to experience a transition, which must be led by the people, individuals becoming producers as well as consumers, or we are going to experience collapse. Transition is beautiful, it's joyful, it promotes health and wellness and regeneration. Collapse could mean the death of billions of people worldwide.
If I go past a huge farm, as you talk about monoculture, you don't see any animal life or bird life or anything. It's almost like a desert.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. These are biological death zones. In a typical forest, you have layers of life, right? You've got the roots and tubers that are under the soil. And you've got your herbaceous layer, a lot of mushrooms and medicinal plants, especially right here. And then you've got your shrubs and your shorter shrubs and bushes and your understory trees and your overstory trees. And then you've got your vines going up them, right? In a monoculture system, you have one layer of food typically. And by the way, your friend that does the regenerative farming, anything that's regenerative falls under the general idea of permanent culture. What we're advocating and demonstrating is stewardship, is the joy and the stacking of functionality, the benefits of becoming stewards of our land. And that ultimately, that's how we change the world. And that's what it used to be for the history of humanity. The indigenous people were the stewards of the land, right? It's biblical, it's logical, it's scientific. So we're talking about going away from the 1,000-acre farms and going back to the quarter-acre farm, right? Which is normal, by the way, still in Costa Rica and Nicaragua and I was just in Mexico, and I was driving down, we're driving down the road, and right in the heart of town, and there was mango trees that had over 1,000 mangoes. There was tamarind trees and guava trees and coconut trees. There was food everywhere in Zihuatanejo, Ixtapa, Mexico, and that's logical. That's so normal. Let's take out the ornamental plants and put plants in that you can eat from when you're walking down the road.
It does make sense, because if you decentralize the growing of food like that, you still end up with enough food.
Yes, so much more than enough. Probably 90% of the food that's growing here goes right back into the soil because we don't need it all, right? Just the sweet potatoes, we've harvested maybe 200-300 pounds of sweet potatoes. I am certain that we're growing 2 or 3 tons of sweet potatoes. So what we're doing, we had an event across the street from us is the sheriff's station. It's funny because everything we're doing is illegal but lawful. And across the street is the Sheriff's Training Center. They had a big sheriff's convention, and I filled up a wheelbarrow full of sweet potatoes and sweet potato starts, and I put it on film, and I walked over and I said, hey, sheriffs, you want to reduce crime? Right? Isn't that your job as a sheriff, to reduce crime? Well, here, start handing out sweet potato starts to all of your community and get your officers to start planting sweet potatoes and different things in parks and on common area. When all of our neighbors' kids have food, then we have a lot less crime.
What do you mean by illegal but lawful?
So I have learned quite a while back that the government does not hold any moral authority over me. And so I built our family homestead without asking for permission. We built our home without getting building permission. We publicly will not pay taxes on land or labor by the threat of violence. Instead, we will voluntarily serve our community. So we actually are working with the local pastor, and the pastor invited us in, and we gave sweet potato starts to like 100 families on a Sunday morning. And now those 100 families, it's the whole teach them to fish principle. Now they're growing food. And so what we're doing here, and we're inviting and creating the network for this to happen globally, is we're creating a local food secure community, right? And it's all about, you cannot hide from what's happening. So the most important thing now that we are more than food secure is making sure our neighbors' kids are food secure, and our neighbors and our community is food secure. Then if we do have a collapse, at least we've got our foundation of food security covered.
But it's such a great catch-22 for law enforcement. They'll come to your property and they'll accuse you of your crime, and you go, well, what have I done wrong? And they'll look at you and they go, well, you're giving people healthy food. That's your crime.
So we had a government agent come here about 19 months ago. And he shows up, and I get the call, and he's in front of my family homestead, right? And we put it all in. I mean, we're 100% committed to this for a lot of logical reasons that I can get into. But I got the word that the government agent was here, and I had a wave of adrenaline go through my body, right? I had goosebumps. I'm like, oh gosh, okay, here we go. I've been waiting for this for about 2 years at that point. And I walked over to him, and I turned on my phone. And I walked up and I said, hello, my name is Jim Gale, and I'm recording this conversation so we don't mix up any words here. And he said, hi, my name's Alexi. I said, well, it's nice to meet you, Alexi, but how did you get permission to come on my land? Implied consent is not granted, and it's posted. And I expected him to say, I'm from the government and I have the right to be here, which is both legally and lawfully not true, according to case law. But he didn't say that. He said, I'm sorry, the gate was open, so I came in, but I will leave if you want me to. Isn't that awesome? So I said, well, maybe, but before you leave, can I show you something? Because we don't want to fight anybody. We don't want to fight the existing reality. We want to build the new model. We have built the new model, which is not really new. It's the oldest model in the book. But I said, can I show you what we're doing? So we walked over into the food forest. And I said, it is our duty to be the protectors of this land, to be the stewards. And what your agency will represent is the death of our world, right? And he had this little clipboard with a paper with check marks. And I said, that little batch of check marks represents every HOA community that you have approved up and down the road, where you took a forest, you cut it all down, you built a parking lot and you put grass, and there's no life. There's no birds or bees. There's no songs. There's no life and food in these communities. The people are suffering and the land is suffering. And he got tears in his eyes. He said, you're right. I will never bother you again. And they have not been back.
I remember, Jim, a few years ago when you and I chatted for the first time, you sent me photographs of what that area behind you looked like, and it legit was sand.
Yeah. Yep. It was.
But do you need a skill set? Do you need to study farming?
Yeah. So, it's funny. I was just walking through the property and I found this fruit today, and I have no idea what this is, right? It tastes kind of good. I don't know shit relative to what there is to know, right? What I do know is that taking action is the first step, right? And the first action is an internal action. It's an action of awareness. It's an action going from fear of what they'll do to me, going from fear of all the negatives, letting go of that fear and stepping into faith, stepping into the knowing that it's time to do what's right and not be dictated by the slave master and evil and all this negative force and violence. And that's what we're doing. In fact, look at that. I just squeezed this thing and a seed came out, right? You can count the seeds in this fruit, but you cannot count the fruits in the seed. It's an exponential free energy system in my hand right here.
But you have a large tract of land there. Can people in the cities do something similar?
So a fella named Eric Heinzelman just moved here to Galt's Landing, and he's now our chef. He was the head chef at corporate Planet Hollywood. He opened up 37 restaurants. He was the top of his chef school, and he was sick as hell living in that corporate environment. He almost died. He lost 120 pounds, and now he's working for Planet Earth. And the reason I bring him up is because he had a 2-bedroom condo. And he started with a 1-bedroom condo, but then he did the numbers and he said, I'm going to get a 2-bedroom condo. And he started growing mushrooms and microgreens in his 2nd bedroom and bathroom. He, by the way, was growing almost $10,000 a month worth of microgreens and mushrooms out of a bedroom. Then on his 8 by 10 foot deck, he had another like 22 different types of food producing plants. So in fact, we're working with 2 homeless people that we've given them sweet potato starts, and they have taken those sweet potato starts and planted them around their homeless encampments. We are working with a military, really epic guy who was nominated for a Silver Star, and he's taking sweet potatoes and his favorite Jerusalem artichokes, and he's planting them at the rest areas along I-75. So anybody can do this. It just starts with the awareness that you can grow in your closet, you can grow on a deck, you can grow in your living room. It's just a matter of start planting seeds.
So it's a philosophy more than a skill.
It's a philosophy. Get started, and the plants become our teachers. By observing and interacting with the plants, you will learn. And then here's the best part. We now have multiple layers of support systems. We just launched originsreclaimed.org, where it's a nonprofit where we have a bunch of professional, freedom-loving, solution-oriented people that are coming together in a community to answer people's questions. Like somebody could take a picture of this mulberry tree and say, what's going on with the mulberry tree? Right? So I'll show you. So do you see those yellow leaves?
Yes.
So we are going through a significant drought here in Florida. And at the same time, we had our irrigation system. We switched inverters, and our irrigation system failed. So normally we wouldn't need to manage any of this stuff. The natural weather patterns would do it. But now for the next week, because it's a drought, we got to take a gallon of water once a week and put it on the base of this tree. And so you could take a picture of this and say, what's the problem with this mulberry? You could post it online and you'll have a dozen answers on how to help the mulberry. So there's solutions everywhere.
But I mean, it's not just about randomly throwing seeds all over the place. There is a bit of an art, isn't there?
Yes, it's a science, because some plants go very well together and other plants don't, right? So this mulberry tree could get 100 feet tall, right? We don't want that next to a bunch of other trees that can get really big. Instead, we want this mulberry next to what we call understory trees. Understory trees like to be in the shade. The mulberry likes to be in the sun. So it's really important that you plant plants where they're best suited.
Jim, what about animals? You're only talking about plants.
So we have 11 cows. We just had 4 babies. We have turkeys and ducks and chickens. The chickens are the Swiss Army knife of the permaculture system. They have so many functions. And of course, the main function is eggs and meat. And we're now incubating and getting our own baby chickens. Oh, and check this out. Eric just built, he's one of these mad geniuses. He built a mushroom growing facility here out of a trucking trailer. And he went to Home Depot or Lowe's and he got some plastic totes. He then stopped at the local coffee store and got their leftover coffee grinds, which they happily gave him. And then we mixed compost with that, compost from our kitchen. And he made a soldier fly larva production system for $20. And that soldier fly larva, we dump our compost in there, and that will feed 50 chickens.
But now, are your chickens free range?
Somewhat. They're free range. We keep them in at night because we lost a few to coyotes not too long ago and some other creature, probably a raccoon or a possum. So we do deal with normal natural stuff. You just have to have the right cages and the right protection, or you have to create the right chicken environment. Like the best chicken environment is a tree or a tree skeleton where the chickens can jump up and they can go on some of the branches that are out of the way of the predators.
Right. So again, it's about trying to integrate the natural environment. But I mean, there are obvious boundary lines you have to draw somewhere. Like, for example, if you have cattle, they're not going to just roam freely in between your food, your plants.
It's funny you say that. This morning, I woke up, I went to the house, and I was on the deck, and I looked down, and the cows were eating the banana right behind me. They got out of the dark pasture. So, yes, that happens. We ran up, we herded them back right into the gate, and they're back in. But this is life. This is freedom. Ultimately, this is the ultimate freedom. Freedom of mind, freedom of body, and freedom on the land. And then, my job is once in a while to herd cattle. And I've never done that before. I got to tell you, it's a lot of fun, a little freaky, but it's a lot of fun. Again, what we're teaching and demonstrating is how everybody used to live forever until just lately, right? And we've been programmed into the belief system that we should just be consumers and that poisons are good and that the government will take care of us. Well, how have they done so far?
An interesting comparison is with monoculture agriculture. There's a lot of wastage. With permaculture, there's very little wastage.
There's no waste in a natural system. Everything gets reused, right? So these leaves come down on the ground, and there's a lot of plants like these pigeon pea over here. We planted them specifically to produce nitrogen in the soil. They're also really good to eat, and they also look beautiful, but their primary function is to build life and nitrogen back in the soil.
But what about obvious issues like, I don't know, moles and insects that destroy some of your fruit and so on?
Yeah. So in the diverse system that we have, and that is permaculture, we have all of it, but none of it is getting away from us. In fact, we have let go ladybugs and praying mantis and one other type of insect that I can't remember the name of. We've let them go in our system. We even were planning to let go black racer snakes, but then we saw they found their way here. And black racer snakes eat rattlesnakes. So my wife is deathly afraid of snakes. So I said, babe, just know that the black ones are there to protect you, not hurt you. and she's trying to work on that.
So what you're saying is, in a very diverse environment, which is a permaculture environment, there's a balance. And so therefore you don't get overt destruction of certain foods.
That's exactly right. There's a balance. There's enough for everything. We want the animals in here. We want the birds, right? Because the birds will come and eat some of the mulberries, and they'll go across the other side of the lake and they'll poop. And next thing you know, you've got a new mulberry tree going in over there.
But still, you didn't really answer my question. Like, let me give you a real example. Moles.
Okay.
Everybody has issues with moles. What do you do about that?
We have moles, but there's no issues. Moles are good, right? Moles, if you have a lawn and you want it to look like a golf course, moles are going to mess you up. We don't want to look like a golf course. We want to look like a life-giving system. So we have moles, we have all sorts of stuff, but it's not. We also have foxes. We also have hawks. We also have raccoons, right? So nature is the answer to nature. Nature is the great balancer of everything.
But I mean, let's say you want to grow, I don't know, 50,000 avocado trees, right? You're not really going to do that successfully in a permaculture environment unless you have a huge amount of land.
Yeah, so avocado trees, we probably have 50 avocado trees. They're starting to come in thick right now. Love avocados. And we have 8 or 9 different types of avocados that fruit at different times of the year. If you want to be in the avocado business, then, well, you still have to have the diversity. So our job is to show what it's like to live completely free. Like, our family homestead is 100% off the grid. We produce all of our own food, water, and energy on site. So if you want to be only in the avocado business, then that's a little different. But we're in all of the fruit business and eggs and fish and everything else. Well, I'm 55 years old. I have never felt better in my life. I run around the tennis court like a 25-year-old, and I don't sleep nearly as much. It just feels good because I'm communing with nature and I'm eating poison-free food, right? I'm thinking either no thoughts or more healthy thoughts than I used to, and I'm eating good and living the life, right? And my workout, I don't go to the gym anymore. I haven't been to the gym for a long time. I'll grab the 5-gallon buckets from the little slough down there, or the pond, and I'll carry them up with water in it, and I will intentionally use that as my workout. And it's way better for your body than holding some kind of barbell. Every plant around me is literally a free energy system. Tesla eats your heart out, right? You don't need to be a genius to figure out free energy. You just need to plant a food forest, because what do humans run on? We run on calories, and it produces more and more calories every year. And not only that, it'll produce seeds. This food forest can literally feed the entire world over time, because it's exponential, because everything has seeds and everything can propagate millions more, infinitely more in the over time.
Okay, but now let's play devil's advocate. What do you do in situations like, I don't know, Middle East?
So in the Middle East especially, you need to start following the permaculture principles. And they're doing this in a lot of places already. In Africa, the Sahara, they're making a green wall across the desert. And they're using permaculture techniques where they're putting in these circles, and they're putting in the right types of very hardy desert-loving plants. And the circles are made in swales, right? They're like ditches on contour. And when it rains, maybe once every 2 or 3 years, they fill that swale with biomass. The rain will come in and it'll slow it, sink it, and spread it underground instead of having it run off the land and erode everything. So in the Middle East, everywhere in the world, when we start using these principles of catching and storing water and then using the permaculture techniques, we can literally turn the whole world into an absolute food producing paradise.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that you can adapt permaculture to all kinds of terrains.
Permaculture is a design science. In fact, if they ever do go to Mars, which I think is absolutely insane relative to healing this world, then they could use permaculture to turn Mars into something.
What do you make of Elon?
I think that he is either a complete fraud or a genius child.
It's one of those two extremes.
Yes. He's either part of the mind control mechanism, which is what I really think, or he's just a silly little child with some genius tendencies.
Okay, so how long have you now? You said 3 years now you've been on this ground.
3 years, yep. This area especially, it was 3 years we started from scratch, blank canvas.
But you need a lot of startup capital to get things going. And I keep going back to the average person. I suppose it does echo what you said earlier, that you have to just start somewhere.
Well, if you want to do this, like this, thanks to Marcel and some other amazing people, we put a lot of money into this. But like I mentioned earlier, we've got 2 homeless people who don't have any money, and they've gotten started, right? There are growers all over in every area that I've ever been that if you go up to them and say, listen, I don't have any money, but I would like to start growing food wherever I can. Do you have any extra seeds? Do you have any extra baby plants? I have never met a gardener that would say no to that request.
My conversation with you is remarkably uplifting, as it always is, but it can come across as too good to be true. There must be cons. There must be downsides. There must be challenges, surely.
Yeah. The ultimate challenge is inspiring and empowering people to realize that they can do something about this problem, this global problem, this global war. And a lot of people have been programmed to believe that they're insignificant and they can't do anything. They are so in shame and humiliation and fear. They have lost all of their courage. So our primary task is to inspire and empower, to create the awareness. And then the question I've been asking obsessively for over almost 2 decades, how do we do that, right? So that's why we have spent a lot of time and energy in creating the systems and the structures that can support people in their transition from pain and suffering and fear to being fully courageous and actually becoming the change that they want to see in the world.
Okay, but more practically speaking, what about things like, losses? I mean, people giving it a go and everything just dies.
Yeah. So when you say everything just dies, most of the time, like here, we've had several plants die because we failed to know how to care for them, or because we've had 4 hurricanes, 2 major droughts, a 500-year flood, and a 40-year freeze, right? So sometimes the climate, the elements are going to cause problems. But when you have the diversity that we have, right? And by the way, even if you have a tiny little piece of land, in the diversity, you could put in a 100 square foot little patch, you could have 30 or 40 different types of food producing plants. You could have some plants that love warm weather, other plants that love cold weather, and a bunch of stuff in the middle. And no matter what happens, as long as you give that some water, if it's a drought, as long as you put a little attention to making sure that the soil is good enough to support life, which is all very doable, then you will have success.
You're not a fan of grass, of a patch of lawn.
The lawn is the physical foundation of the world's enslavement, of humanity's enslavement. The lawn is a scam. It's the ultimate psyop. When Henry Kissinger, back in 1974, said, if you want to control the world's currency. If you want to control nations, control energy. But if you want to control people, control food. That was not just the ramblings of a psychopath. That was the man in charge of the strategy to enslave humanity.
Is it scalable to infinity? Is there a cutoff at some point?
No, there is no cutoff because we have, the sun goes dark, then we're kind of screwed. That's the cutoff. The cutoff, because we've got energy coming into this system all the time. The wind, the rain, the sun, and those energy forms, when we catch and store those energy forms effectively, we catch and store them by putting that energy in the soil, right? This idea elevates and transcends all of the divisive narratives that the governments are speaking. Right? It transcends the climate change narrative. It transcends parties in government, right? Because this is demonstrably and provably the solution to all of it.
Yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense also from an Agenda 2030 perspective, because one of the UN's ambitions is to put as many people into the city centers as possible. And permaculture is precisely the opposite. It's about decentralizing all of that and taking effectively control away from the oligarchs.
Yes, that's exactly right. When we start growing our food locally and poison-free, then we get the price of food goes down. It's a supply and demand thing. If you've got a million mangoes, like in Mexico, nobody could ever sell a mango. Because where I just was, there's mangoes on the sidewalk, right? So when you have enough supply locally, the price goes down. And that's a major factor now all over the world. And then
with the tariffs.
With the tariffs, and even here in Florida, Florida should be almost free food or inexpensive. The price of food is going up insane right now. And another massive component is we solve the health crisis. Because the reason people are sick is they're eating poisonous foods, they're consuming poisons in their minds and in their bodies all day long.
Didn't you meet with RFK Jr.?
I did. It was about maybe 20 months ago, and I was in the food forest, and I got this inspiration to create a campaign. And it was a political campaign structure where I created 4 talking points, 4 big claims. Like politicians love to make big claims. And I had a picture of 4 different politicians. And Kennedy was standing in a school. And his big claim was, I'm going to take the poisons out of the schools and the children will heal. While he's standing there and the children are planting food. If this is the only thing we do, and that is add regenerative agriculture classes to every school in the United States, we don't need more money. In fact, the result of regenerative ag classes in schools will be an income and wealth production system. So it'll actually cost less money, and the students are already there and they already want to do it, right? So when I showed RFK this, he got all excited. He goes, I love this. Let's do it. And then there was 3 more pictures there. The next one was a picture of Donald Trump at a prison. And Donald Trump's big claim, I will reduce crime by 50% over the next 4 years. The media would have went nuts until Donald Trump, which he hasn't done yet, which is why I don't trust the man, he exposes the truth of the matter. When our inmates grow their own food at prisons, not only did one study show a $40 million savings for the taxpayers in one county in California, but the recidivism rate went from 67% to under 10%. So it is literally when the inmates learn the principles of growing their own food and practice those principles, their recidivism drops. So we're literally talking about the end of childhood diabetes and suffering, the end of the majority of crime. And then DeSantis was at a city park. He says, I'm going to end hunger in the United States by using the same resources that we're currently using to mow lawns and spray poisons. Now, instead, let's plant food and let's spray compost tea, which actually increases the vitality of the land. And the last one was the churches. The churches are now mostly demonstrating the exact opposite of the biblical principle of stewardship. And so we're working with churches, we're working with sheriffs, we're working with all of these different entities to bring in these new models. And they're all based in God's design or nature, which solves all of them.
It's so obvious when you think that you have schools and churches and prisons and government departments, all of these big spaces that could end up with food forests.
Yes, yes, yes. We are creating the new model, the idea whose time has come stronger than all of the armies of the world. We, being everybody in this movement who's taking action steps towards their own self-reliance first, and then building a community around them of self-reliant people. I might be wrong, and I've been wrong a lot, but I don't think it's going to be too long before we have a systemic collapse of the systems. We're already experiencing it on multiple levels. So it is our job right now, this spring here, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, right, to start planting seeds and then talking to the teachers and the sheriffs and the prison wardens and the pastors, right? At the church, our local pastor, his thing is surrounded by a 5-acre lawn. Well, guess what? He's now growing food at the church.
And that reduces so many other costs.
Yes. It's exponential in the abundance and logic and beauty and joy of it all. You know, we've also been taught to fear nature. I've had 2 people tell me, one person, I said, yeah, plant a food forest here. And this lady goes, oh, that'll bring in the raccoons, right? And she said that with fear. Another lady about raccoons said, oh yeah, raccoons will destroy the houses. She meant it. Like, well, I grew up in a house, raccoons all over all the time. They never destroyed our house. So we've been so programmed to believe in sanity that we're scared of nature when we're not scared of eating McDonald's. They're not going to want to dig in your trash when they've got food all over the place, right? Yeah. And then we bring in all the animals, the apex predators, all of it, and we live again with nature, right? Nature has been the bad guy for too long.
What's that quote that you gave to me some years ago about the ducks and the worms?
Oh, yes, that's a fun one. So you don't have a June bug problem. You have a duck deficiency. And then the animal becomes another food production. Like there's a guy, there's a TED Talk. It's about foie gras. And an Italian guy won the foie gras competition 2 years in a row. And the French were losing their minds, right? How can an Italian win our competition? Well, here's what he did. He created a pond, and then he planted all of these particular geese and ducks' favorite foods. He then noticed that they were landing there and creating homes on his property, right? He then started building this system, and the geese, every year, he would take half the geese around the corner, just lead them right around the corner, and slaughter half of them. And he would use that to make foie gras. And then here's the part that blew my mind. All of a sudden, the geese that were remaining noticed that there was enough food and resources for their friends. So then when the other flocks of geese were overhead, they would go, come on down, there's room for all of you, right? But when there wasn't room, then the new geese would be cast away by the other geese in the flock, right? So nature has a perfect balancing system, and nature communicates in ways that we don't comprehend, right? The mycelial network in the ground is like a communication network. In fact, sometimes I think I'm just working for the mushrooms.
So instead of trying to remove an element and creating scarcity, you add an element and create abundance.
Exactly. Well put, brother. Yes. when we live it, when people come here, and I've given well over 1,000 tours, people from all over the world actually have come here, and we have a 100% inspired rate. Nobody has ever left here and said this sucks. People have come in wanting to say this sucks because somehow their egos got triggered, and they came in and they're starting to bitch about this or that, or they're bitching about the cows, or they're bitching about everything. By the time they leave, they have a new perspective every time.
That's exactly right. Nobody can go into nature and go, well, that's disgusting. I mean, you don't look at the beauty that's behind you and go, ugh, that is vile.
Right?
It has the opposite effect. It brings a sense of life back into you.
It does. It does. Can you hear the birds, by the way, through this mic?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I can hear a blue jay, a mockingbird. Earlier, I heard some sandhill cranes, and then there's a whole bunch that I don't know the names of, right? That bird song is a vibration. It's a frequency of healing to the real, like, and the smells that are around here. They are frequencies that heal your body. And of course, the mulberries, the plums, all the food is nature's medicine. That's why I feel so at peace right now. And that's why I can stand here and I can tell the government, I can tell Donald Trump, hey, Donald Trump, I think you might be doing some good things, but Donald Trump, come here and let's really change the world, because you're also doing some things that are very destructive. And we don't want to fight. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to tell you that I'll never pay taxes to your government. Instead, I would like to volunteer my time to support your government. Right? It's not my government, by the way. My government is nature. It's God. It's way bigger than what you're talking about. So, Donald Trump, Governor Ron DeSantis, and all the rest of you, we've got this. Let's integrate the schools. Let's integrate the prisons. Let's integrate the police force. Let's integrate the military. In fact, let's add permaculture to every army base around the world. Let's create radical abundance around our army bases, and then let's hand them off back to the people and end colonialism. And when we do this, we will create, in general terms, peace on earth. The most profound deductive reasoning that I've come across, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, right? The most cited and studied military strategist in the history of the world. His primary and fundamental deduction: know thyself, know thy enemy. 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories. Contemplate that, brother, because once we know who we are, we know our enemy is ignorance and fear and evil, then there's nothing to lose. We've already won.
Jim, how can I find out more or follow you?
Yes. Originsreclaimed.org is a community marketplace. There's no owners of this. It's a not-for-profit. It's owned by humanity. And that's where we are going to be coming together to follow Dr. Martin Luther King's advice. Those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war. And we are creating a network that is locally based. It's international with its knowledge and wisdom, but we focus on creating local self-reliant groups. And then foodforestabundance.com. And for people who want to come visit us, come to Galt's Landing. It's galtslanding.farm. It's GALTS landing.farm, and come experience what we're talking about.
I just want to throw one thing at you that might be a deal breaker. I like my wine, Jim, and I don't see enough vineyards on your ground.
We are turning all of our fences into trellises, and we could produce 500 bottles of wine off of our one primary fence, plus dragon fruit and passion fruit. So yes. Now, then again, Florida wine, relatively speaking, it's not that good. So bring some from South Africa.
Well, 500 bottles is good enough. All right, Jim Gale, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Thank you, Jeremy. Love you, brother.